There was a man whose job was to escape from prisons. No prison in the world had ever managed to hold him, but one day he was locked inside a facility so secure no one had ever escaped it. What happened next? Today, I'm going to explain the movie Escape Plan. So let's begin. At the beginning, we meet Ray. He's already working on a plan to escape from a prison. This facility once housed the most dangerous criminals. One day, Ray attacks an inmate, and as punishment, the guards send him to an isolation chamber. Inside that cell, Ray begins scanning everything around him. He notices a CCTV camera watching him 24 hours a day. He also realizes that the guards come to visit at the same time every day. He doesn't have a watch, but he's counting the minutes in his head. With just toilet paper and glue, Ray starts crafting something. Every piece is part of his master plan. Today, Ray will escape from this prison. Just then, a car explodes outside the facility. Chaos erupts inside the prison. Firefighters are called in. Amid the confusion, Ray puts on a firefighter suit and starts making his move. His team is already waiting for him outside. He gets into the car and they drive off. But the police are right behind them. We find out that Ray's team had planted the bomb in that car. Ray soon jumps out and finds a payphone. He makes a call. But as soon as he steps out, he's arrested. That's when a man named Clark appears. Clark hands over some papers to the police. Suddenly, the scene shifts to the warden's office. Ray and Clark are sitting across from the warden. Clark tells him they work for a private security firm. Their job is to test the weaknesses of prison systems. Ray had been hired to try and escape from this prison. Before this, Ray had already escaped from 14 other prisons. The warden asks, how did he manage to break out of this one? Ray begins to explain his plan. Every day, the guard would step outside for a 7-minute smoke break. That was Ray's only window, 7 minutes, and no tools. So he made tiny round balls using toilet paper and glue. Every day he was served milk, sealed with a thin plastic film. The room had a password-locked security door. Ray placed those round paper balls into the keyhole. The moment the guard left, Ray got out quickly and pressed the plastic film gently over the keypad. The next day, when the guard opened the door, Ray looked at the smudges left on the film and cracked the code. Then, with help from a hidden contact, Ray secretly passed on the date and time to his team outside. On the chosen day, while the guard was out, his team created a diversion with another car explosion. Ray entered the passcode, got out of his room, and headed straight to the CCTV control room to play a loop of his cell's footage. Then, through the vents, he crawled to the emergency bay and put on a firefighter's uniform to slip past the guards. He lay under the fire truck, hiding. Soon, a getaway car arrived. Ray jumped inside. Midway, Ray got out again, called Clark, signed the final papers. The mission complete. The warden, though stunned, was deeply impressed. He now knew his prison had serious flaws. The very next day, a CIA agent named Jessica visits Ray's office. She gives him a new offer: escape from the most secure prison on Earth, a place that holds the world's deadliest killers. And Ray's job is to find its cracks and break out. Jessica offers Ray double the money because they know no one in the world can pull this off except him. But there's a catch. He can't tell his team where he's going, and no one from his team is allowed to help him. Hearing that, Ray's friends beg him not to take the job. They say if something goes wrong and they can't locate him, they'll never be able to rescue him in time. And even their company has rules against such blind missions. Still, Clark urges Ray to say yes, and Ray agrees because he wants to take risks. That's who he is. A fake identity is created for him. From now on, he's no longer Ray. His new name is Portos. In the last 10 years, Portos has been marked as the mastermind behind several terrorist attacks. To complete the cover, Ray's team injects a tiny GPS tracker into his body, just in case. But Jessica had strictly told them not to. Still, they did it anyway, because to them, Ray's life matters more. Soon after, Ray is kidnapped by men in a black car. They strip him down, scan his body, and find the GPS. They rip it out and destroy the signal. And just like that, Ray's team loses all trace of him. He's injected with something and slowly passes out. When he wakes up, Ray finds himself inside a glass box. He looks around. There are dozens of boxes like his, each holding a prisoner. Ray realizes this is the prison. For the first time in a long time, Ray feels fear, but he controls it and begins observing the environment. This place has advanced security cameras, and all the guards wear black uniforms and face masks, so no one knows who's who. Ray begins to think, maybe escaping this prison is impossible. He decides to wait for the warden. In all his past missions, he was always told the warden's name and an emergency flight code. If he was in danger, he could say his real name and the code and get extracted. Soon, the warden finally shows up. Ray looks at him and asks, "Are you Mars?" The man replies, "No, I'm Hobbs." Ray tells Hobbs the flight code and asks to be released, but Hobbs just laughs. "You really think saying a flight code will get you out of here? Not happening. No one escapes from this place alive." Then he coldly tells Ray to just accept his new life here, otherwise things will get much worse. Meanwhile, Ray's team is desperately trying to locate him, but they can't. Later, the prisoners are given recreation time. The glass box is open for a short break. Everyone gathers in a large room. Ray watches everything carefully. Suddenly, one prisoner is caught breaking a rule. The guards beat him violently. He collapses from blood loss. Ray is horrified by what he sees. A few inmates try to provoke Ray. They taunt him. He ignores them at first, but when one of them crosses the line, Ray punches him to the ground. From a distance, a prisoner named Emil Rottmeyer had been silently observing everything. One day, he walked up to Ray and introduced himself. "I feel like I've seen you somewhere before," he said, trying to recall. Emil then shared something strange. He once worked for a man named Victor, someone who was like a modern-day Robin Hood, stealing illegal money from the rich and distributing it among the poor. Only Emil knew where Victor was hiding, and because of that, Victor's enemies had him arrested, not by the law, but by pulling strings. They got him locked up in this very prison just to extract that one piece of information. "Even if I die," Emil said, "I won't reveal where Victor is." Ray didn't understand why Emil was telling him all this, so he simply walked away. But as days passed, Ray kept a close eye on everything inside the prison. He had realized something early on. If he ever wanted to get out of here, he'd have to do it on his own. Meanwhile, Emil had also been watching Ray closely. He saw something different in him. If anyone can break out of this place, Emil thought, it's him. So he started talking to Ray more often, and slowly, a strange friendship began to grow between them. One day, Emil told Ray the truth. This wasn't an ordinary prison. It was a private facility where anyone with enough money could have their enemies locked up. In fact, nearly 80% of the inmates here were innocent, framed, and dragged into false cases by powerful people. Hearing this made Ray even more anxious. Then one day, Emil offered something unexpected. "If you're planning to escape, I want to help," he said. Ray looked at him and replied, "I need to get into the isolation chamber." Before Ray could explain, Emil suddenly attacked him. Ray fought back, and a fight broke out between them. Loud, brutal, and violent. Guards rushed in, separated them, and threw both into separate isolation cells. That was Ray's plan all along. Inside the chamber, there was intense heat and blinding halogen lights everywhere. The temperature kept rising, and the pain was unbearable. But even then, Ray stayed focused. He noticed something others had missed. A thin metal plate on the floor, screwed into place. He figured, maybe, just maybe, this could be his way out. Soon after, Warden Hobbs opened the chamber and pulled them out. Ray was in bad shape. A doctor came to check him, and Ray quietly begged for help, but the doctor refused. The next day, during break, Ray tried again. "I need a thin, round piece of metal, about 3 inches wide. If you can get it for me, I'll help you escape from here too." Emil agreed. Later, he asked permission to meet with the warden. Hobbs, curious about Emil's connection to Victor, tried questioning him, but Emil kept dodging, changing the subject again and again. Frustrated, Hobbs gave the signal. A pipe was shoved into Emil's mouth, and water forced down his throat until he choked in pain. Yet through it all, Emil managed to slip a small piece of metal into his pocket, the very tool Ray needed. Outside, Emil handed the metal piece to Ray. "What are you going to do with this?" he asked. Ray finally opened up. He wasn't just a prisoner, he was a specialist. His job was to get into high-security prisons using fake IDs, locate someone inside, and then break out with them. Private prison companies hired him to test their security and paid him huge amounts if he succeeded. So far, he had broken out of 15 prisons, but this place, it was different. Ray believed he had been trapped here intentionally. and Hobbs knew all about it. Emil listened carefully as Ray continued, "But I've found a way out. When I pressed my ear to the chamber floor, I could hear a vast, empty space underneath. Based on how everything is built, it's clear whatever's below must mirror what's above. If I can break through the floor and don't find a path, I'll go upward. Either way, I'll find a way out." Emil asked, "But how will you open that steel plate?" Ray explained, "That metal you gave me, I'll polish it using toothpaste and take it in with me. Once they switch on the halogen lights in the chamber, I'll use the light's reflection on the metal to heat the screws. Steel expands at high temperatures, even 3 centimeters. That's enough to loosen the screws and remove the plate. Once it's open, I'll drop down into whatever's underneath." Impressed, Emil nodded. "You're a genius," he said. Ray looked at him again. "But I need your help one more time. We both need to get back into the isolation chamber." And so, they staged another fake fight. Guards broke it up, and just like last time, they were thrown into separate cells. Once inside, Ray got to work. He blocked the CCTV camera using toilet paper. Then, just like he planned, he used the polished metal to reflect the heat onto the screws. Slowly, they began to loosen. Ray removed the plate, and finally, he slipped down into the unknown. Meanwhile, Emil tried to stall Hobbs by delaying the cell check. Ray crawled through the narrow space beneath, trying to move as fast as he could. But there was no path downward, only upward. Suddenly, a loose wire snapped, and water began flooding in through the broken pipe. Ignoring the rising water, Ray kept climbing up until he found a hatch. He pushed it open and emerged, only to freeze in shock. This prison wasn't on land. It was built inside a giant ship floating in the middle of the ocean. Ray looked around, confused. He couldn't tell which ocean it was. Then, he spotted guards patrolling above. He quickly climbed back down, but he slipped and fell straight into the water. On the other side, Hobbs got the alert. There was water leaking into the facility. He immediately ordered the isolation chamber to be opened. But luckily, just moments before that, Ray managed to get back inside his cell. Meanwhile, back at the agency, the test was officially canceled. Abigail and Clark broke into a heated argument over it. Abigail realized that Clark had deliberately trapped Ray in that prison. Hobbs found the screws of the isolation chamber and started suspecting Ray. He began watching him carefully. One day, Clark called Hobbs. Everything was clear now. These private prisons had huge investments behind them, but every time Ray managed to escape. Because of this, no clients trusted them anymore. Ray always found a way out of their traps. That was why clients paid me big money to trap Ray in Hobbs' prison. Hobbs would get a cut of that money too. Here, we understand why Clark forced Ray to take this mission. He was directly involved in setting a trap for Ray. Meanwhile, Ray told Emil that the prison was built on a ship floating in an unknown sea. To escape, Ray needed more help. Hobbs found out about this plan. That's why the guards sometimes beat Ray badly, trying to break his spirit. But Emil always encouraged Ray. One day, Ray negotiated with Hobbs to get the location of the victor. But Hobbs said Ray had to be released first. If Hobbs could capture Victor, he would get double the money. Hobbs agreed to Ray's contract, and Ray began planning his escape. Sometimes Ray got updates about Victor from Emil. Ray also went to Hobbs to talk about the Victor, but he lied to Hobbs. To know their location, Satyajit made a compass from a pen and glass. Ray convinced a criminal named Javid to go to the ship's roof and get their location. Javid agreed because he also wanted to escape. As part of the plan, Javid made a deal with Hobbs. He would gather information about Ray and Emil, but would prey on the roof. When Javid heard that his enemies had trapped him here to punish him, he became angry. In the evening, Javid went to the roof to pray, but he slipped past the guards and discovered the ship's location. Ray learned they were near Morocco, but the ship was stationary at a specific spot in the sea. They needed outside help. Emil said he knew someone in Morocco who could help if they sent their location. That person could rescue them. As part of the new plan, Emil attacked Ray with a knife. Later, Ray was sent to see a doctor. Ray told the doctor everything and asked him to read a book from Hobbs's room. The doctor read the book and realized Ray was telling the truth because the book was written by the doctor himself. The doctor agreed to help him. Ray gave the doctor their location and a phone number, asking him to send the message to that contact. Ray knew the doctor had a computer in his room. Hobbs started planning to catch them red-handed because he realized Ray and Emil were trying to escape the prison. Meanwhile, the doctor sent the date, time, and location to Emil's friends. One day, suddenly during break time, Javed started a fight with other criminals there. Soon after, everyone began fighting each other. Hobbs ordered the guards to take action because he understood that Javed had lied to him about the plan. But everything was getting out of control. Ray, Emil, and Javed also fought with those criminals, and after a while, they started moving upwards as part of their plan. Seeing everything getting chaotic, Hobbs ordered gunfire and sent guards after Ray. Ray fought some guards, took their guns, and a shootout began between both sides. Hobbs lost track of him because Ray started destroying every CCTV camera on their path, but Hobbs did not lose hope. He ordered the guards to catch them. Meanwhile, Javed got shot in the stomach and was injured. He couldn't walk now. Hobbs locked every door to stop their escape, which made Emil extremely terrified. There was one more way out, but they had to leave Javed behind. They were annoyed to leave Javed alone because he had helped them a lot, but they had no other choice. Javed understood their problem, took a gun from Ray, and told them to leave quickly because time was running out. Then, Ray and Emil split into two groups, following their new plan. After a while, guards came to Javed and started shooting, but Javed fought them like a warrior, fighting until his last breath. Meanwhile, Ray entered the engine room. He fought with a guard for several minutes and finally killed him. Then, Ray cut off the ship's power supply and opened all the doors. At that time, Emil managed to reach the roof. Hobbs realized the doors were open and closed them again. Meanwhile, Emil saw an armed helicopter waiting for him. The guards started shooting at both the helicopter and Emil. Emil somehow reached the helicopter and began firing back. Despite closing all the gates, Hobbs couldn't find Ray inside, so he ran toward the engine room. Actually, Ray was inside a flushing tank that floated in seawater for a set time. Before Hobbs could shut the tank, Ray flushed out and came outside. Emil threw a ladder for Ray to climb onto the ship. Hobbs also came to the roof and set fire to the ladder. Emil got shot in the shoulder. Cleverly, Ray started shooting at some barrels outside. When petrol started leaking, Ray fired at it, causing a huge explosion. Hobbs and his men died in that blast. Emil and Ray finally escaped by helicopter to the Moroccan coast. Ray was shocked to learn that Emil was actually Victor and Jessica was his daughter. Jessica sent Emil to rescue her father from that prison. Portos was Ray's code name. Emil realized Rashmi had come to rescue him, which is why Emil always tried to help Ray. Victor and Jessica left that place. Ray understood he was used, but showed no reaction because breaking out of prison was his addiction. The next day, Abigail told Ray everything about Clark. She said when Rashmi was out of their reach, she learned that Clark was involved in a deal to trap Rashmi. Then she found out Clark was appointed CEO of that prison with a monthly salary of $5 million. Clark planned to imprison Ray to save his prison's reputation. Security forces passed information about these illegal private prisons to CIA agents, and that prison was shut down. Since then, Clark has been hiding. One night, Clark got into his car. Ray's friend used chloroform to knock Clark unconscious. When Clark woke up, he found himself in his locked car. He shouted for help, but no one heard because the car was on a ship filled with many containers, sailing in unknown waters. And the movie ends here. Friends, how did you like this story? Please make sure to comment and let me know. We'll meet again with a new story, a new video. Thank you.